I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlooks manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. Hey y'all, happy Wednesday. Happy Workforce Wednesday. How are you? Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited because I'm talking to Chris Kuntz from Augmentir today. And Chris and I go back, man, I feel like.
Yeah,
at this
we
point.
do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So how are you? I know that you are in marketing at Augmentir. And I got to know you through an online virtual event that one of our industry friends, Aiden, put together for Generator, right? And I got to interview your CEO, and that was a really awesome experience for me. And then from there, I think we've been on at least one panel together, and I've met Madison. If Madison's watching, hey, Madison, because she lives right down the road.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
It's been awesome. It's been awesome. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and Augmentir.
Yeah, so I head up marketing and go-to-market programs here at Augmentir. You had a great conversation with Russ back whenever that was now, centered around workforce challenges and manufacturing. And what's interesting and, good for us, obviously, is that those problems, they've gotten worse in the past 6 to 9 months. I mean, there's a real labor crisis right now, and that's kind of squarely where we are focusing our technology. As a technology solution, but focusing how technology can help that. So it's been great. We're growing fast. We just got done with a big spring set of schedule of events kind of around the country, doing a lot of events, both combination of strictly manufacturing events, but also events that have started to get into kind of the HR and learning side of things as they blend HR and learning with OT technology. So it's been really, really good to talk to companies. And universally, everyone, they have the same set of issues and challenges. There's no easy answers. So it's good to have conversations like this, because I think it helps to not just raise awareness to some of the issues that everyone has, but also what are solutions, approaches, what are quick wins that people can do. So it's been good.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that was something very interesting that kind of drew me into Augmentir and what you guys were doing. I thought was really unique, and really offered a good solution for, like you said, a quick win. So Chris, I don't know if we'll get to do a panel anytime soon, but if we do, how do you feel about a karaoke night? Is that kind of something that you'd like to do?
Yeah, that would work.
Awesome.
Definitely. Yes.
Yes. So with that, I'm going to ask everybody, what is your favorite song?
Well, if we're doing karaoke, it'll have to be something Queen, right? I mean, of
Right?
course, right? Right.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because, Jake Hall, who was on our panel in New York too, he was on a few weeks ago and he said, yeah, his answer was Bohemian Rhapsody.
So I'm surprised by that, because he's a millennial, right? He's a bit younger, so I'm surprised by that. But maybe the movie sort of turned him on to that music. Great music, right?
It's good. It's good music. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I have a wide range, actually. So I'm a very big Grateful Dead fan. So those are probably the top of my list. But also all the '90s grunge and indie rock is where I am, and even today. But you can't go wrong with Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody. So perfect for karaoke, right?
Of course. Yeah. I'll tell you, my brother's favorite karaoke song is Sweet Child of Mine. So
Another good
anytime that
one.
we have our family get-togethers, we have a portable karaoke machine. We have like several things, right? So like in the summer, we have like one of those H2O goes. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's
Yep.
basically like your home water slide. And anytime we have like parties or we're having like a cookout, we're all calling each other like, okay, so who has the H2O go and who has the karaoke machine? And then like random things like, hey, do you remember that platter that, was mom's? Can you can we use that? I mean, just random stuff like that for all of our family get-togethers. But the karaoke machine is always usually involved. And my brother is always it's his go-to karaoke song is "Sweet
Very
Child of Mine."
cool.
So
Very
yeah,
cool.
absolutely, absolutely. So now that we've kind of gone through all the awesome music that's out there, past and present, right? Let's talk about Augmentir and what you guys are doing for the workforce, because I kind of designed this show to be about Workforce 4.0,
Mhm.
which you brought to my attention. I had no idea it was kind of defined as the intersection between human resources and Industry 4.0 technology. And I wanted you to come on because I think, you definitely have some great insights on that to share with us. But how is Augmentir giving people more meaningful work with the help of technology?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so it's I'll answer that, but this workforce 4.0 thing is kind of interesting. So certainly, I think it's there's a couple of places that have defined it as the intersection of HR and Industry 4.0. And what's interesting is when you look at Industry 4.0, I mean, the human side of that whole space and that whole equation, the human side has been kind of underserved by technology. I mean, for the most part, manufacturers, the workers, frontline workers, are using the same technology or lack of technology that's existed for the past 20 years. I mean, they're using paper-based work instructions. They're signing forms. They're going into filing cabinets. They're pulling out binders with dust on them to get schematics. I mean, it's not modernized, right? And so I think there's definitely a lot of efforts underway to not only modernize that, but bring technology into the hands of the workforce. So I think this is a great topic, and that's kind of squarely where Augmentir is sitting. So we're a suite of what we call connected worker tools, but they're really tools that help the workforce and employers and manufacturers help them empower their workers from hire to retire. So that entire life cycle of that worker, it helps empower them to not only do their jobs better, but to be more productive at doing their jobs, which in turn is going to help them be more engaged, help them going to feel better doing their jobs. So it's everything from digital guidance and instructions. It's on the job training, right? And so it's moving training closer to on the job. And it's even technologies, which I think we'll get into here, but even approaches and technologies that help them do things that they weren't able to do previously. So it's empowering them, it's giving them growth and career potential. So things that typical, I mean, you're from the HR world, right? There's a lot of technology and solutions out there to do that for desk workers, but not for manufacturing workers. And so we're trying to address that. And I think it's obviously an opportune time, to do that now with some of the issues in the workforce crisis today.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring up a couple of comments. We've already got some really good comments here. And thank you guys again for commenting and showing your support. And if you have any questions or anything for Chris, please feel free to drop those and we'll address some of those as well as we go along. First and foremost, I have to wish Aaron Prather and shout him out a happy Workforce Wednesday. Thank you, Aaron, for being so supportive. He was actually my first guest on
Oh, great.
Workforce 4.0. Yeah, he's a huge workforce development advocate. If you guys aren't following him, definitely give him a follow because he is always posting some great stuff. And then Jesse Wells, he is here. He says digital twin is greater than a dusty binder. I can't agree more. So
Absolutely.
when
Right.
Chris, when you were saying that, you know what I kept thinking about? I kept thinking about like in the HR world when you're talking to some of these HR managers and they're like, going around doing roundtable discussions and saying, yeah, well, this is what our company's been up to, kind of thing at some of these meetings. And
Organizing the coat closet,
at
organizing the
least, at
organizing the
least,
file cabinet.
yes, well, at least one person was going to say, well, we've reviewed and updated our employee handbook.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a big, it's I'm laughing, but it's a big job to do that because then you're updating it, you're printing it, you're proofreading it, and then you're putting it all together. And depending on the size of your staff, I mean, that's you could have anywhere from 50 employees to 1,000. So that's all of those copies, right? So I totally resonate with that, Jesse. I get it for sure. Yeah, so Augmentir, it's just a really neat solution. You touched a little bit on empowerment. And I really think that's such an important element to this because in a lot of plants that I've been in, I feel like, it's very repetitive and there's not a lot of growth opportunity. And I feel like we as an industry could be doing more to really truly empower the workforce. So let's talk about that for just a minute here. But why do you think that the future workforce will be built on this idea of empowerment? And what does that look like for companies today? Like, do you see that in present day? Some shifts being made there.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an increase in attention spent on empowerment, and that's a lot of things. That's creating a more collaborative environment. That's creating an environment where workers can provide feedback into process improvement. You know, and actually, we have some customers that are starting to sort of gamify that a little bit, right? And so workers that can provide input into process improvement. We think of a factory line, and hey, I see an inefficiency here, and then being able to digitally submit feedback on procedure or a work process and then have that be accepted, right? So there's a lot of value in terms of participating in the greater, productivity goals of the company. That's certainly valuable. You're not just, doing your job heads down. You're actually involved and collaborative. And then actually collaboration is interesting too, because now, the dynamics of the workforce, people are looking at, from an HR standpoint, I think employers are looking at what are different ways that we can retain or attract employees. And one of them is maybe create flexible work schedules, right? So when you do that, maybe it's hybrid work, but then you have people that are not always sort of in the same facility, same location. So collaboration, is a challenge to keep going there. Again, digital technology can help there. You know, Desk workers, we all use Zoom, WebEx, Teams, right? But that's a little bit different, a little bit harder to use on the shop floor. So having collaboration technology that's sort of purpose built for that industrial or manufacturing setting helps as well. So there's just a lot of angles there, but definitely, manufacturers are starting to look at that as a way to, what are different ways that we can use to empower our employees. We're seeing that across the board for sure.
I love that because in my experience in recruiting, personally, the companies that provide roadmaps for professional development opportunities and for their employees to make real business decisions through collaboration and through advancing their own skill sets outside of just, the basics, being reliable, showing up every
Right.
day, having a good attitude, having aptitude, all those good things. They're much more likely to succeed in recruiting and retention than companies that don't focus as much on their culture.
Right.
Um,
It's interesting. So, we get approached by manufacturing companies all the time, and it's one thing to say, hey, look, we're using paper-based work instructions or paper-based SOPs for safety, compliance, quality checklists, whatever they are, right? So it's one thing going paper to digital there. But when you look at skills and skills tracking, if you have 5 people, easy to track skills. If you have thousands of people across a bunch of global plants, it's much harder, right? And the
absolutely.
reality today is these companies are like, well, we're modernized. We're tracking skills on a spreadsheet, right? Okay, that's a spreadsheet that exists somewhere, right? But it's completely disconnected from the actual work that's happening. It's disconnected from the people, right? So the people really, the employees don't have access to it. And then when you're looking at competency and proficiency in a job, how is someone doing on that job? You have to go back and find this spreadsheet, figure out kind of what skills they have, where they need upskilling. So bridging that gap, I think, is a really big opportunity. That's one of the things that we're addressing with our solution, is bridging the gap between what have you been trained and skilled in and certified in versus how you're doing, how you're actually performing on the floor. And then you give that to the employee, they have a little bit more control over their career growth, right? So they can see where their deficiencies may be, they can be a little more proactive in upskilling, from their standpoint, because, and again, just that leads to empowerment, leads to a little bit more engagement. So
Absolutely. And, I think that it's important that we keep in mind that people don't necessarily know what they don't know. So, they're not going to have the ability. I mean, most people, unless you're just really, really in tune with everything.
right.
And there's certainly people like that, but I don't think most people really have the ability to like look outside of themselves and make those decisions on their own. I mean, they don't know what they don't know. And in addition to that, as kind of a build on, um, not knowing what you don't know, I think sometimes we just want to give very specific information, right? But I think, especially with the younger generations, they need to see the bigger picture. We talk
Absolutely. They
all
need to see that they have a purpose. They need to see that they're part of a
exactly.
greater story, not just, you know, punching a time clock, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really popular meme. I don't know if you guys are in memes, but there's this really popular meme and it's like, I have questions about like writing or dying. I don't know. I don't remember the specific words, but it's like I have questions like where are we going? Who's going with? Are we going to eat? We have questions. I think our generation, we have a lot of questions, and certainly Gen Z. We want to know all the pieces to the puzzle so that we're able to feel like we can contribute at a higher
Yes.
level, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think
Uh,
companies and employers are starting to recognize that. And again, this is where this type of technology comes into play. It not only, it gives employers a way to kind of empower the workers, but then it gives workers a little bit more sense of kind of how they're contributing, where they're contributing. We've had some comments on feedback. I talked about, worker feedback, and then, using that to improve the cycle. I mean, that's huge as well. So, it definitely gives them a little more empowerment, a little, a better sense of their job, more purpose.
Absolutely. I'm going to show this comment from a LinkedIn user. I want to say that's Carol. Carol, if that's you, remember I get it because I'm that LinkedIn user too on all the lives. But she's got a question here. Hi, Chris. How are you using Augmentir to get feedback on your platform from the frontline operators?
Yeah. So feedback is a couple different things in our sense. From a literal sense, feedback is, let's say an operator is going through a standard procedure to either operate a piece of equipment, maybe it's maintenance, whatever it is. If they're going through that procedure and they reach a step and there's, an image, a video, a helper, schematic, or, image on whatever they're doing, maintenance or something. If that's wrong or incorrect, they can say, hey, here's a better picture that represents this, or a better picture that represents this defect. Maybe you could add that to the work procedure, so that, you know future runs, future people are going to, benefit from that. That automatically goes back to the content managers to look at and say, hey, yeah, that is a better representation of a defect, or that is a better representation of how to open the back panel of this filler machine, whatever it is, right? And so that can be incorporated into the procedure. I mean, there's no better set of instructions than, someone actually walking through it live and up to date. So that's kind of one example. But then behind the scenes, we're also capturing how workers are performing those jobs. Again, whatever it is it safety, is it quality, is it operations, um, is it maintenance, or service and repair? And getting the system is getting feedback on how those workers are performing. Is there a step that's taking everyone far too long? Maybe it's a step that a training manager can proactively set up some upskilling training for the workforce to be able to say, hey, this is how you do this routine, because it's just not well known here, or whatever. So it's an efficiency gain here by looking at how are people performing. Or maybe we can just put a micro learning video into this, particular routine that's going to help everybody sort of get past that. Something that was taking 20-30 minutes now, only needs to take 5 minutes. So there's a kind of a couple ways we're incorporating feedback in. All are super critical, And it's just kind of helping from a continuous improvement standpoint, right? Helping to continually improve not only the workforce and empower them, but then improve the processes that surround that as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's just a really interesting tool instead of having, because then you're preserving that tribal knowledge too, right?
Yep,
Like you
totally.
said, I mean that tip of, this is how you can expedite something, and this is just a trick of the trade, right? Trick of the
Right.
Yeah. So this is not well known, but you can do this instead. That's because we talk about tribal knowledge a lot. We're like, we need to preserve tribal knowledge. But again, it's one of these terms that you're just like, well, what exactly is tribal
Yeah.
knowledge? That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
That,
Preserve it and then digitize it so that it can be turned into a corporate asset, right? It can be turned into something that can be reusable, part of the knowledge base. I mean, one of the things our system does is curate all this knowledge and put it into the hands of the worker, easily accessible. So you don't have to figure out what binder do I have to go to, what system do I have to log into to get this information. It's sort of at your fingertips and in context aware at your fingertips. So when you're in a particular routine, a particular procedure, doing a particular job, you can get sort of simple access to all that. And so digitally capturing that tribal knowledge in whatever form it exists. Maybe it's a session between a subject matter expert and a novice worker who's trying to solve a problem, right? To capture that and then put that into a searchable knowledge base and then make that accessible. I mean, that's huge. So we're definitely seeing that that's where companies are going. It's a long road though, right? It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's definitely critical and valuable. I mean, we've talked forever about the retiring workforce. I mean, that problem's not going away, and it's a reality, right? So this helps address that.
yeah, it is. And I mean, that's a really, again, when we talk about quick wins, that's a great quick win for manufacturing for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I've got another question. You guys are really asking some great questions. Thank you so
I know.
much.
Look at this.
This is from Trent Randalls. Chris, have you implemented a system that monitors operator performance at an assembly machine, cycle times to complete tasks, defects produced, etc.? Really
Yeah,
good.
great question. So assembly is a good use case for us. Certainly not high volume assembly where a lot of it's automated, and that's a whole separate, industry 4.0 topic. But high mix, low volume assembly, absolutely. We're being used to track, quality. A lot of our customers are using that to get people on the line faster. So you get it, you hire. I mean, again, this gets back to the whole labor shortage. That the report out by the Workforce Institute on the labor gap that exists. 90%, 9 to 10 out manufacturers that say that their biggest challenge right now is a workforce gap, labor gap, inability to hire skilled labor. So if you can't hire skilled labor, you're lowering the hiring bar a little bit. You're hiring people that may not have the skills. But then the challenge becomes not hiring, and the challenge becomes getting them skilled enough to be productive on the line, assembling whatever you're assembling, right? So moving that onboarding and training closer to the point of work, getting a little more, on the job training when you're doing that is helping them get productive faster, but then tying in all the aspects of, okay, now you're going to track how that operator, how that assembler is performing their job, track it against quality, track it against time to completion, and then use that to say, where could they be upskilled? We can smartly upskill now. We can smartly train now, instead of taking 3 months to train someone on everything that they may possibly need to do. Be very focused on, be smart on how you're training, based on how they're performing, and then tracking where they're struggling, where they're succeeding, and then using that across your entire workforce. Absolutely, assembly is a great use case for us. And then it gets into, you need to integrate with quality systems potentially to track defects, integrate with other, obviously, for the most part our solutions integrating with some work order system that's generating an assembly work order, for example. But digitizing all that and then optimizing that, putting the power of what to do into the hands of the worker, but then giving them the opportunity to, when you can optimize what they're doing, through this sort of continuous feedback loop. I mean, it's really valuable to the companies that we're working with. So definitely a good use case for us.
Absolutely. I think I've got time. I know we're getting really
Yeah,
short
this was
on
quick.
time here for the day, but I think I've got time for one more question. The title of the episode is called Workforce 4.0 will be greater than a master of one. And when we sat down and we were planning out this conversation, this was one of the titles that I really struggled with, because the title that I had, I don't know, I don't know, I didn't like it. So I was thinking, I think I'm going to rename the show. And I told you that the title. And I was just thinking about it after our conversation. The only thing I could keep thinking about was really that old idiom, right, by Robert Greene. It's like a jack of all trades, a master of none. Because I do think as we advance into this skills gap in Industry 4.0 technology, there's going to be far many more generalists than specialists, because
Yes, yes.
it's going to come out of necessity,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Um, but from your perspective, why do you think that the workforce of manufacturing future will be made up more of like Jacks and Jills of all trades?
Yeah.
And
This
are
is,
there
yeah.
already companies adopting that strategy today?
Yeah, I mean, this is great for sure. And so I have a good story. So I like I like chocolate cookies, right? So we have a customer of ours, big manufacturing company, big food and so they make the best-selling chocolate cookies in the world. I mean, just it's not me saying it, but they are the best-selling chocolate cookies in the world. They're the best chocolate cookies in the world. So big food manufacturer. They had a problem. So again, it's you say skills gap, it's really a labor gap, right? So they had a problem on their in some of their many of their facilities where lines would go down, call into maintenance to get the line back up and running. It would take hours because maintenance was short staffed. And again, in this Workforce Institute report that came out, a lot of good stats on I think 60% of manufacturers say at any given time we're short staffed by 30%, on any given day. Um, so there's a real problem. So line goes down, maintenance crew can't show up, take 2, 3, 4 hours for them to show up. That's production. Chocolate cookies aren't being made. Everyone's sad. So what they wanted to do was a couple of things. They wanted to standardize on some of these more routine maintenance tasks and input and empower. I'll use the word empower again. Empower the machine operators to perform those maintenance routines instead of relying on the maintenance techs, the specialists that were skilled in these things that they can't hire. So they wanted to give operators more flexibility in what they were doing, make them more of a generalist versus just my sole purpose is operating this piece of equipment. So they had a handful of preventative maintenance routines and some of the regular maintenance routines, digitize those through Augmentir, gave those to operators, and they were able to let operators perform a lot of the maintenance routines. And as a result, operators feel better. They're doing more to help keep the line up and running. Their downtime went down by I think 27%, because of this. So real value at the end of the day. It's autonomous maintenance is kind of what it's called, but it's putting maintenance tasks into the hands of the operators to perform those routines. And why? Well, it's because you're short staffed. It's because you can't just magically hire a bunch of skilled technicians to solve the problem. That problem's not going away anytime soon. You're going to continue to be understaffed. And so that's a maintenance example, but it can be across the board. Again, it relates to what we talked about with empowerment. It's giving people the ability to do more than what they were, maybe potentially hired for. It creates a more engaged, worker base. And absolutely, we're hearing it from customers. They want to create a team of generalists. If you only have, if 30% of your workforce isn't going to show up any given day, or you're going to be short at any given shift, by 30% of the required people that need to be there, you're going to need a team of generalists to help sort of offset that. And that gets into the importance of smart scheduling, of smart job assignments, a bunch of other things. We could have a whole nother conversation on that, but really cool stuff.
Yeah, but you know what I love about that example is that when you're thinking about, because we're always fighting this narrative about robots taking our jobs. And when you get into that, yeah, I mean, there's going to be, again, out of necessity, there's going to be increased automation in manufacturing. Robots are going to do more tasks as a side effect of this increased automation. But my outlook has always been let's be proactive about it and not reactive. So if we know this is going to happen, and we do, then why not do something like that company that you were talking about? Why not identify your top employees that have, the attitude and the aptitude, as I like to
Right.
say, and give them a path forward to where when this shift does happen, and I know everybody's not on the same timeline, so it may be sooner or later, depending on your company. But when this shift does happen, then you're investing in your workforce by taking a potential situation that could be negative, right? With job loss and what have you, and you're upskilling them and giving them an opportunity to not only advance themselves professionally, but also give them the opportunity to invest your whole economical ecosystem.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's an upskilling thing for sure. And not all jobs are going to be automated. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, there's just a lot of things that, even assembly, when you get these high mix, low volume assembly operations, they're not going to be automated. Right. But definitely the next big thing, and this is where tech comes into play, is upskilling and reskilling, and be able to do that smartly, right? So be able to do that very smartly. It weaves in aspects of learning and development. It weaves in aspects of HR, who are the people have the right attitude, aptitude, and then who are the people that are actually competent in performing their jobs, and sort of blending all those things together. So absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great discussion today,
Yes,
Chris. I really
a lot of
enjoyed
good
this.
questions that we didn't get to, but we'll
I
hopefully try to address these offline.
I know, yeah. So what I'll do, I'll go back and rewatch this later, either tonight or tomorrow night, and try to respond to as many of these questions. And I'll tag you too, so
Yeah,
they
shoot them
won't
my
get
way. Yeah.
lost and you'll see them. But for anybody that would like to reach out to you independently, can you tell us where how they can reach you, how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, obviously, you just hit me up there. Love to chat. You can email me at chris.kuntz@augmentir.com as well. Love to connect with anybody. LinkedIn may be the easiest, but absolutely love to connect with all of you and answer any questions directly that I can. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, perfect. Well, I have really enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much for your comments and for coming and your great questions. And we're really excited to kind of keep this show going next week with our next episode for Workforce Wednesday. We hope to have you all back then, same time, same place. And Chris, thank you so much for
Yes.
coming and sharing your knowledge with us and talking more about the connected workforce. I think that is I just think that's such a good solution to an immediate problem. So I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy
Yeah,
guy.
thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. This was great. We have to do it again soon.
Yes, definitely. Most definitely. I agree. All right. Well, everybody
Great.
else, have a great rest of your week. Happy Workforce Wednesday, and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.